What's up, everyone? We have another Seeing the World Integrally video, and today's going to be a pretty fun, hopefully insightful video. We're going to be talking about how time, the new, if you want to use the term dimension, that's fine, but I would call it an A-mention, the A-mention of time. And an A-mention is just a dimension that is immeasurable. So it has the same function of a dimension, it's just invisible. You can't actually measure it. Time as a new dimension, A-mention, is firmly in our collective unconscious with integral consciousness, and today we're going to be talking about how time affects, shapes, and conditions the political landscape. Now, don't worry, because this isn't going to be a partisan, go vote for Trump, go vote for Biden, or whoever they run. It's nothing like that. We are going to be talking about the left and the right because there's really no getting around it in this video. But it's not going to be a particular. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for or anything like that. It's nothing like that. I actually wrote a Substack on this. I think it's pretty good. I mean, if you're interested in hearing a more formal presentation of this, I will link the Substack below. I'm going to read the opening to mine, and then we'll just kind of do a little more informal. I'm not going to read the whole article because I don't want this channel just to become me reading articles. It can be good if I'm feeling a little uncreative, and I want to get a video out. It's like, okay, but so I guess the main idea is, I think, for better or worse, the left has the left has adapted. Excuse me. The left has adapted, or adopted. That's probably a better word. Adopted the 4D integral view, for better or worse. Now, I think usually it's for worse, as we're about to explain in this article, but that's not because it's the left doing it necessarily. It's because all of this is happening non-consciously. So you will hear me talking about the left more than the right. It's not, I know you guys know I generally come from the right. It's not because I want to pick on the left. Trust me, I have no problem doing that. That's not a problem for me. But I sincerely do believe that the left has kind of adopted this. Again, non-consciously, they don't quite realize what's going on. But in fairness, neither does the right. So that's what we're going to get into. We're going to be talking about which issues on each side kind of, you can't help but think of time. Okay, so let's just, again, we're going to read the opening, the first 3 paragraphs, and then we'll just do a little informal thing. Time, in all its complexity, affects the political landscape more than one might initially realize. The non-spatial depths of the A-mention cast a shadow of darkness around the phenomenon, but its efficacy is clearly visible. All one has to do to see it is to listen to the slogans offered by political activists, particularly those on the left. Again, there are on the right. We will get there, don't worry. My association with time as a world constituent and the political left is bereft of judgment value, despite my ardent opposition to contemporary left-wing American politics. It is the left, for better or worse, that has opened itself to the powerful energies of integral consciousness and its emphasis on time. Though, as this piece will prove, it is not an exclusively left-wing phenomenon. So again, we're going to be talking about time. In the first video in this series was kind of talking about the pre-rational and irrational, the new privileging of those energies and how that affects the political landscape. If you want to hear the spatial aspect of this, go watch episode 1 in this series. So the left. Let's see what we got here. So we're not going to be taking a super deep dive. We're going to be talking about the slogans that both sides make, and we're going to be peering into the temporal grounding, for lack of a better term, of their slogans. I don't think people quite understand how much time has affected our political landscape, conversations, whatever you want to call it. So think of classic, we're going to start with the left, then we'll get to the right. Think of classic left-wing slogans that we've heard in the past, particularly since 2014. I think since 2014, the fuse was kind of lit, and all that building came to fruition. The fruit ripened around 2014, 2012, somewhere around there. And we started to get this new intensity on the left that was, in my opinion, ridiculous, but that's, you have your own opinions on them. So let's go through a couple of these slogans. We have Time's Up, remember around the Me Too movement, Reparations Now, End White Supremacy, The Right Side of History, Me Too, or Never Again. These are all classic. Now, Never Again is kind of bipartisan, but these are all left-wing slogans, and if you pay attention to them, you can see the time is clearly efficacious in these slogans. It's clearly efficacious in their thought. So we'll just go one by one. So Time's Up is relatively self-explanatory, right? There's a new emphasis on time. Now, of course, this touches on time as a quantity and time as a quality. So time's up in the sense of, not in a measurable sense, insofar, well, let me take that back. Time is up in a measurable sense for those who partake in a particular action during that time sequence, which is to say, time is up for men who exploit their power to sexually abuse women, which is a good thing, by the way. That should have never started in the first place, so yeah, that's a good thing. Time is up. So in a sense, what's happening? Time is up in a measurable sense. Now, I say in a sense because if time were to be literally up, like in totality, then the world would end, right? That's not obviously what they're talking about. They're talking about time's up for a particular action. You can no longer engage in this action because to engage in this action is to enact procedural unfolding, right? If I would never do this, of course, but if I, like the slogan is aiming at, if I'm Harvey Weinstein and I were to sexually abuse a woman, well, there is a temporal unfolding of that happening. First, I stand up, then I hit you, then I knock you out, then I do this, that. There is a temporal folding. So what they're saying is you don't have the time to do that anymore. You're going to fill that time with something else. And of course, why is time's up? Because from the victim's perspective, from the woman's perspective, the time as a quality undergone during this experience is so unfathomably bad and terrible and felt to such a high degree that it is simply immoral, and we feel we have a moral or spiritual obligation to prevent this. So time's up. We have time's up as a quantity insofar as you're working with the time in a way to engage in a immoral action, and time's up as a quality insofar as this understanding of time as a quality is what reinforces this idea that we're done with this action. Okay, so reparations now. This is another thing. This emphasizes time as a quality and the past, because you wouldn't need to pay reparations in 2026, say, if you had not acted immorally in the past, so reparations now clearly reveals that the past is present and efficacious, and we can tell because it is definitely affecting our present moment in the form of causing or creating the drive or desire or want to pay reparations, to sort of impose this penance or this punishment on yourself for the immoral actions you've gained, or you've engaged in, excuse me. So the idea that the past is present and it shapes the past is present and efficacious and it shapes the present, there you go, reparations now. The idea that past immoral events are so efficacious and they're so shaping that our present moment, you can't have it without the past, So there you go. The left bases when they implement change politically, socially, culturally, whatever, they base their justification on what happened in the past. So rather than the traditional rational way of saying it's in the past, move on, no. The left, even if non-consciously, what they realize is that the past is still here, it's still present, it's still shaping us, so no. So that's very important. I mean, it gets, And then, of course, there's time as a quality as well in reparations now. Of course, reparations presupposes that you, during a particular time span, let's say Jim Crow or slavery, well, during that time span, black Americans, let's just say it was a rough time, to put it lightly. Now, why was it a rough time? Because they were treated as second-class citizens at best, or slaves. So time as a quality, when you realize that, there's a quality charging each moment and each sort of time span, and those qualities are felt with the entirety of our Constitution, which is true, because you've always had a bad time in life, even if it's, you got broken up with or whatever. You feel those emotions. It's not just some empty container. So that's, of course, now they are right on that, obviously. I mean, when it comes to stuff, come on, you can't be doing that. That's insane. So we'll move on to the next one, end white supremacy. So this one's obvious. Again, end presupposes that the past was filled with white supremacy, and not only that, the white supremacist elements are shaping our present circumstances. Maybe we'll tie this in actually, you know what? We'll do it right now. So I would argue that all this talk about systemic racism is based on this integration of the past into the present. The idea, I mean, you can very clearly see how it comes about. The idea that the past shapes the present, right? So past Jim Crow, past slavery, past all these terrible things, which obviously I agree are terrible. I would never, ever, ever deny that. I would never try to reinstitute that. I will never, ever accept people in this community who think that's okay. That is wrong. You are insane. I don't care who it's against. You're wrong. What was I just saying? So, because systemic racism existed in the past, which is undeniably true, anyone who tries to deny that is just lying to you. I don't care if you're on the right, you're wrong. It must be manifest in the present. The problem with the left is that the evidence they have doesn't support this claim. So it's not that the past doesn't shape the present. It's just you have to be intelligent about it. When you make measurable claims about systemic racism causing all these bad things, well, we're going to measure these, and if the measurements show that you're wrong, we're going to say you're wrong. You are right on the principle of the past affecting the present, and then we'll get to the future. Nonetheless. So, interesting. Being on the right side of history is very important to the left, to assume that just based, I mean, this is the problem with there's problems on the right too, don't get me wrong, but the problem with the left is this inherent assumption of moral and intellectual superiority. And when you hear them say things like, I'm on the right side of history, that pretty much is this inherent belief filtered through a temporal understanding. So the left, they're so sure of themselves that they believe they can time travel into the future, look back at what happened, and judge, apparently, the objectively correct, good, or right side of history, which conveniently always happens to be an affirmation of their values in the moment and always denounces the people who they denounce in the moment. It's very convenient. So it's this really, really weird game. And you can tell what's happening right here. It's a disintegration of the future into the present. Well, of course, if the past shapes the present, so does the future, right? Your future conceptions, dreams, images, whatever you want, those drive you forwards, and that's how you get the present. Nonetheless, this is a disintegration because it's just absolutely absurd. You are not so morally superior to anyone, especially not inherently, that you can just imagine yourself time traveling into the future and then looking back at events that haven't even taken place yet. You don't even know, and just go, "Oh well, everyone's on my side." Yeah, that's called your psyche just running. It's a regression. Like I said, it's a disintegration. They get props for trying at least, but unfortunately, it's pretty bad. But yeah, that's the key point here. When you say the right side of history, that's future-oriented. That clearly suggests that the future is present and efficacious and is shaping the present moment. But of course, if you're on the right side of history, so not only are you being future-oriented, but once you get to that future destination, you're almost looking backward. So in a way, the right side of history disintegrates both the past and the future together. Just they do it in the worst way possible, in my opinion. So the Me Too movement, that's another one, because that doesn't seem temporally related, but it really is. So the Me Too movement, in integrating time non-consciously, anytime a woman comes forward with the claim of sexual assault, what they're saying is, look, this incident did not happen separated and isolated from the world, which is to say, there is a temporal sort of sphere or block where the past, present, and future exist. And in the past, other women have, unfortunately, been victims of this kind of experience. So time is that element, or a mention, that integrates stories of one woman with stories of another. Because no longer are you treating the one woman as a separated and isolated event completely divorced from reality. Once you take the time to look into the past, which is obviously temporally driven, then you can integrate all these women's experiences into a movement and a sort of, a movement. Let's see. Never again. Again, that's a lot of things going on similar with reparations now and stuff like that. The past exists, it's present, and there are events that happened in it that were so negative, so terrible, that we have no other choice to to not do it again. It can never happen again. Now, of course, that would be a reference to the Holocaust, which is obviously a good. The Holocaust wasn't good. You obviously never want to do that again. That's again, I really don't like that stuff. I think it's disgusting. The last point, I think the left, and don't worry, we're going to get to the right in a second because there's a counter pole of this. I think the left has unfortunately so captured by the horrors of the past that they've used that as justification to destroy the beauties of the present. And I think that's really, really awful. And I'll give you what I really think at the end of this because I want to talk about the right because I think there's a kind of polar game being played here. But I just think it's bad. I think it's awful. I think this talk of systemic racism without actual proof is pretty bad. Everyone just appeals to either stories, which rely on intuition, which normally I'm not really against as long as we're keeping that in place. But the claims are immeasurable. Anyways. So now we'll get. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to stick with the left. Also, real quick. So think of your more far left thinkers. Think in Ibram X. Kendi. He also talks about this integration of time and the past and the future when he writes, "The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination." I'm not going to make a comment on this because, again, I'm going to try to keep it relatively neutral. But notice the emphasis on the past and the future here, right? Very, very, very important. This is, I would consider this a disintegration insofar as it's not successful, but this is an attempt to integrate the past and the future and time into our countenance. Let's see. So time as a quality combined with time as an intensity, which we talked about earlier, this idea that every moment is charged and then you feel that moment, we're going to call that psychic temporicity from now on. So psychic temporicity is the reason why we have workers' unions at all. It's the psyche's way of experiencing time. Workers' unions, rather than treating workers as mere objects or chess pieces to move around, they're saying, no, you are a human being. We are going to humanize you, and this is where the left shines. This is where the left is superior than the right. They say, listen, we are not going to treat human beings as objects. I don't care if it comes from a pre-rational source. I don't care if it comes from an irrational source. We will treat people like humans. We will be sensitive to them, and we will try to improve their lot even if there's no perfectly logical reason to do it. That is the best of the left, in my personal opinion. Sometimes I think they take it a little too far, to the point where you can never make tough trade-offs, you can never make tough decisions, no tough love is allowed, stuff like that. Nonetheless, the intention is good. And you can see how this would create workers' unions. So no longer are you just a chess piece or a little object that the bosses can move you around, and then you can have a black lung or get a metal lung in place, or you have children working in the coal mines, right? You're a human being, and you experience time as a quality. So you're spending not only a lot of time in a measurable sense, let's say 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, but the quality of time experience is terrible because there's all this soot, there's all this black mold, there's all this coal, there's all this terrible stuff. So, recognizing that workers are humans and we ought to look out for humans and probably should place their interests above machines and just sort of endless production of worthless goods. That's probably a good idea, don't you think? They say no, you get protections. You have certain health standards that the businesses are going to pay for, and they were never going to do it, or at least I shouldn't say that. They would have done it eventually, but the businesses aren't incentivized or inclined to pay for these health provisions or safety provisions, safety guidelines. We don't care. You're a human being. Psychic temporicity is real. There's no point in wasting 84, 90 hours a week for 40, 50, 60 years in terrible conditions. That's not a life worth living. Yeah, work is important. It's a quality. So, yeah, we do have the left to thank for that. Now, I think, unfortunately, unions have kind of outstayed their welcome. But all my critiques are economic. It has nothing to do with the intention behind it. I think the intention behind it is great. But, unfortunately, is what it is. Let's see. And I guess you could think about feminism, right? When you hear these feminists talk about unpaid labor, emotional labor, that's psychic temporicity, my friend. So when they talk about unpaid labor or emotional labor, let's say you got a feminist girl and she's consoling her cuck, and what is she doing, really? She's expending energy in a task, which is, say, taking time to do something that's expending a lot of energy. And not only that, the qualities revealed in that experience are often negative. It can be draining. It can be tiring. It can be exhausting. And it's important. It's important qualitative work. You're sort of tending and healing and feeding the soul of your partner, cuck. So on just a gut, intuitive, psychological level, it feels unfair that I'm doing this high-quality work. It's taxing. I'm taking time, both in a quality and quantity sense, out of my day that I'm not going to get back. And what do I get in return for it? Nothing. I get nothing for it. The same logic applies to artists who put their soul into their painting, so therefore their crappy, trash, Andy Warhol nothing is priced for $1 million. Why? Because it's not about the realistic valuation of the painting itself. It's about the qualities revealed, the qualities of pain, suffering, care, joy, ecstasy, and the high degree to which they were experienced. You cannot help but attribute all that pain and suffering onto the value of that artwork, because that artwork is a piece of your soul, and your soul is priceless, so of course it's going to be overpriced. That's another thing with the left. So this idea of time as a quality. I think they understand this better than the right. I think they employ it terribly. But, what's worse, right? Employing it terribly or not employing it at all? Because if you employ it terribly, at least the main idea is out in the open and we can make improvements throughout time. Not employing it at all, it remains completely unconscious. If it remains completely unconscious, we're either never going to get to it, or if it finally does, it's going to be terrible. So, okay. No, so the problem, of course, with that little feminist who whines about unpaid emotional labor is that goes both ways. We can drop this idea that only women are expending energy in tasks that reveal negative qualities for their partner. That is ridiculous. When women gain 0.5 pounds and then they come crying, do you promise you'll love me if I get fat? It's like, yes, sweetheart, we got you. Okay, trust me. That goes both ways. And that doesn't have to be a male-female thing either. It could be a parent-child thing. Of course, parents do this all the time. That's just a part of loving human beings. In a way, I guess if you could find a sensible way to pay for it, that'd be fine. I just don't know what that is. So that was the left. I know there was one part where I got a little in the weeds there, but now we're going to move on to the right. Again, there's going to be less to be said about the right, because simply put, I just don't think they adopted to it. For the worse, by the way, because again, what do we know in Gebser's series? What happened to Montezuma? Spaniards came in, fresh off the efficient energies of the mental structure. The Aztecs, still marred in the deficient aspects of the irrational and pre-rational. What did Montezuma do? He sent one of his boys to send sorcerers to attack the conquistadors, to attack Cortez. How did that work out? So the right, should they continue to not adapt to time, will be destroyed. And that's bad. It's bad if the left would be entirely destroyed too, because these are two poles of the human soul. Okay, so now we're getting to the right. So the most obvious one, I'm not trying to be divisive here, would be Make America Great Again, right? I mean, that was the slogan of 2016, and 2020 it was Keep America Great, and then what was it, 2024, Make America Great Again or something? But think about what's happening, right? There's obviously an emphasis on the past. The past is something that's simultaneously present and efficacious, and through memory, we know that the circumstances or the standards of our present political landscape do not meet the standards of the past. So what Trump was going to do was make America great again, try to emulate or recreate, in a modern contemporary sense, the high standards of the past. Sounds great. Here's the problem. This is the point I was making earlier about the left. Both sides here are making a fatal mistake. I said earlier that the left is captured by a pessimistic, nihilistic disintegration of the past, where they have become so overwhelmed by the horrors of it that they just burn it all down, and everyone gets to live in this sort of nihilistic pit where it's just like Judge Holden's wet dream. That's bad, that's awful. The right does the same thing, just the opposite way. So they romanticize everything. This is why you have serious people in 2026 who are on the far right, who genuinely want to emulate or recreate the 14th, 13th, 12th century with a straight face. They were being dead serious. They want to reinstitute a monarchical society. It is ridiculous. So one side only integrates the past and does it terribly. The negative sides of the past and does it terribly. The other side integrates only the positive sides of the past and ends up with terrible results. So how do we fix this seesaw from hell? Here's how you do it. Recognize that America in the past, just like pretty much any civilization, was both good and bad simultaneously. There you go, okay? Because here's what happens. The longer that the right says, make America great again, let's focus on the past, let's do the golden era, the longer that they do that, well, they give the opportunity of the left to say, really? Was it a golden era? Was Jim Crow a golden era? Was Jim Crow the era of greatness? Was slavery the era of greatness? And so long as the left only talks about our negative past, it gives the opportunity the right to say, really? The Civil Rights Act? Really? Voting for women? Really? Voting for minorities? All this stuff? Wealth? A life-saving medicine? All this great individual rights? There you go. Both of these are destroying us. Both are a product of a disintegration of time. We are in the 4D world. Let's see. Okay, and then another part with the right, of course, emphasis on the past, is their love for tradition. Now, as someone who came from the right, I love tradition because I understand that tradition is the transmitted wisdom of millions who have faced the exact experiences that threaten to overcome us in the present moment. So, yeah, listen to them. Now, I don't think you can have a civilization without some tradition. I don't think you can have anything without some tradition, any sort of large social body. Even if you did, I think it would be so divided and so destroyed that it just wouldn't be worth living. I wouldn't want to live in a civilization without any tradition, especially the good ones. I mean, come on, man. Christmas, any sort of communal stuff, Thanksgiving, all this different stuff. It's just silly. Now, of course, what's the problem? The problem is when you take it too far. So some traditions, in a Gebserian sense, were created via pre-rational and irrational, via the unperspectable world. They didn't come out of, they're not mental traditions, right? They're not rational traditions. They're pre-rational and irrational traditions. Now, in a way, that's not necessarily a bad thing because you could say, look, of course we're going to keep doing that because we're still pre-rational, we're still irrational, and this is a way of constraining ourselves and tying us back and showing respect to an aspect of the human condition. Great. The problem is, sometimes those traditions are so irrational and so pre-rational that they actively impede our ability to make progress in the moment, in the present. And when you stick with them, for better or worse, you're going to have problems like this where you're just needlessly holding yourself back. You're needlessly kneecapping yourself. It's just silly. There's no need. You should respect tradition, but not fetishize it. I don't think... I feel like that's an idea that... I was going to say everyone can get around, but I guess some people on the left would say that's inherently bigoted or postmodern stuff. Okay. Okay, here's... So now we're going to talk about the right's... We talked about the left's future orientation, which is this sort of ridiculous right side of history stuff. Now we're going to talk about the right's emphasis on the future. Believe it or not, the right seriously believes, it seems, the far right or the neo-reactionary right, that the solution to the negative effects of rational erosion and corrosion of the soul, of turning a human being into an object that is just moved around like a chess piece by elitists, the solution to that is to further objectify the human being, conferring quantifiable limits and irregularities onto him in the form of transhumanism by turning us into robots. And better yet, this is inevitable apparently, and this isn't a desirable end goal. So you have genuinely intelligent people on the right who are young and intelligent and somewhat knowledgeable, sincerely advocating for the destruction of our civilization as soon as possible, so they can accelerate this process, so they can actually live in that sort of technocratic utopia. This is... do I even need to explain how stupid this is? I mean, if this is what the far right is getting... I would never actually do this, but put aside the bigotry for a second, which is awful. I would never do that, really. But let's say they were little Jesus figures running around, and they, even if you just had this would be enough for me to be like, yeah, this is so stupid. This is so stupid. As Gebser says, technocratic, all this transhumanism stuff, it imposes quantitative conditions on man that leads to an immeasurable loss of freedom. I just cannot believe that this is what we've come to. These are the negative effects of not properly integrating time consciously. We have not mustered the intensity of consciousness necessary as a whole. You and I may have, but as a whole, to deal with the twofold task of dealing with time. It's just so silly. I cannot believe. Man. Another problem with the right is because, remember, now, you guys are more than welcome to disagree with this. This is not some set fact or whatever. You guys are more than welcome to disagree with this. I do believe that the right does line up, at least relatively, to the right in the mythical sense, the reason, the Apollonian principle, essentially, that Nietzsche talks about. They're more rational, in my opinion. They're more measured, more reserved, more orderly, stuff like that. Now, I do concede, some of my subscribers did a good job kind of. I don't think it applies on the globe. I think it can be a little complicated then. I'll concede that. But I do think it applies to America. I really do. Take gay marriage for an example. What is the Apollonian principle? What is the American right doing? They're establishing boundaries. You cannot... gay marriage is unacceptable. This is a boundary. This is a rule. Well, what is the Dionysian all about? It's about boundary dissolution. It's about destroying those boundaries that the Apollonian creates. So they destroy that. Another example is... of course, like voting rights. That's an obvious example. Another example is just sort of cultural, let's say cultural dress code. You know, women have to wear this, women have to wear that. All of a sudden, the left comes out and they said, no, free the nipple, we're going to do the hippie stuff. So there you go. The problem with the right, in their rationalism, is they render everything static. So they are painfully unable to recognize that we are in a transitory period, that things are changing, the human psyche is changing, and therefore all our static, old ways of doing things are threatened to be destroyed. And this actually applies less to the far right. The far right actually understands this, which is surprising. It's the liberal rationalist right, the more moderate right, that doesn't get this. They still think if we just follow the Constitution, no matter 6 decades of their other side just absolutely destroying it when it suits them for power, and then appealing it to exclusively when it suits them for power, they just don't understand the world they live in. They think this is just a fad, that everything's going to be fine, that people are just a little crazy because of the internet. They don't know anything. They're completely delusional. I just don't know what to say. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Yeah, so they, and kind of like I wrote here in my article, they're actually delusional. They still think that America, they don't understand the idea of time changing and moments being separate from moments. They don't understand the phrase, no man steps in the same river twice. Like America in 1776 obviously can't meet the needs and expectations of America in 2025 because 249 years, or I guess now 250 years of history and events and experiences have been integrated into the collective unconscious of Americans. So yes, there are going to be changes, yes. And especially compounding this is the mutation of the integral structure. So I don't know what to say. But this sort of moderate right, they're delusional, and they embody the famous Arnold Toynbee quote, where he says, schism in the soul, schism in the body social, will not be resolved by any scheme to return to the good old days, or by programs guaranteed to render an ideal projected future, or even by most realistic, hard-headed work to weld together again the deteriorating elements of civilization. Only birth can conquer death, the birth not of the old thing again, but of something new. This is what always will destroy the right, because they're set in their ways, they're too static, they don't have that openness that the left has. And the left needs a little more staticness, if you will. They need to be a little more ordered. So there you go. So what now? Let's see. Should I just read? Yeah, I'll just read the last few paragraphs of my article here. So the key here is to recognize that time is an invisible amention that unfolds whether we like it or not. It is not something to be conquered or mastered like we attempt to do with all our fancy machines or tools. Planes that conquer space in less time, or sports records, usually those related to who has done something the quickest, that are meant to stand the test of time, but a world constituent whose effectiveness is made clear when when attuned to, not controlled. There's a typo there. Time is not a spatial object to be wielded for goal-driven ends, like a hammer pounding away on a nail, or else it would still belong to the rational sphere. Rather, time is like a current that has its own autonomy and agency, and we all know that the best results arise when one swims with the current, not against it. So again, time, you don't use time like a hammer. That's rational. That's goal-driven, directed, purposeful, spatial object stuff. That's not happening. Suddenness and this sort of slow, long, uninterrupted, extended duration happen simultaneously. They will happen whether you like it or not. You have to work with the grain. You swim with the current. The current has its own agency. Time has its own agency. Space, not really. I mean, it kind of does. But you can control space, at least to an extent. Time, not so much. That is, all of the temporal forms that are simultaneously present and efficacious, be it past, present, and future, and whatever else, must guide you rather than you commanding them. Time as a quality, procedural unfolding. There you go. You have to let those guide you. Don't try to master them. No, it's stupid. Let them master you. The right must respect and integrate the time as a quality that the left has picked up on. True. The left must respect the love and reverence for piety and the tradition that the right holds dear. True. Without immediately resorting to moral nihilism when they realize that, yes, the past was not perfect. It's okay, left-wingers. It is okay to acknowledge good things that happened in the past in addition to the bad things. It's okay. You do not have to be captured in the present moment and put into this sort of nihilistic burn-it-all-down resentment. This is a disintegration of time. Well, all you're coming to is that the past is efficacious and present. Great. Use that healthily and intelligently. That benefits everyone, not tearing everything down. What both sides are coming to is the realization that the present is shaped by the past and the future. Or, as biologist Adolf Portman put it when describing how past and future are integrated into the present state of biological organisms, quote, "It is difficult to comprehend these forms of life with their long past of transformations over millions of years which are still fully present today, and in which future formations live among us in the plethora of structural potentialities preparing the next transformations." I think we will end it at there. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's more things I missed. Maybe, I know a lot of you guys are on the left. Maybe, you guys have something that I missed. Maybe I'm too close to the sun. Maybe I haven't. Maybe I'm biased. So if you notice that there are other maybe slogans or actions or policies that seem to be driven by either the past or the future, let me know. I love you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And be safe. Have a good time. And I love you guys. I will see you soon.